Heidi-ho, it's another episode of The Last Angry DJ. My name is Mitchell K.C. Hill, as you just saw. I'm the old guy that remembers the golden age of broadcasting, and my cohort here and producer, Mr. Alexander Monday from It Takes a Thief. He's oh, wait a minute, wrong TV show. The thing with David Hasselhoff. Knight Rider. Yeah,
Great
here's
show.
Alexander Knight, my cohort.
Good to
Go
see you,
ahead,
Mitch.
Alex.
Good to see everyone. This is episode 72 of The Last Angry DJ, the show that, intersects old media versus new media. But unlike the world of Iron Chef, it's not about whose industry reigns supreme. It's about discussing the ongoing challenges that we're all facing. And we interview luminaries in the world of broadcast, and that could be DJs, salespeople, entrepreneurs that run radio stations, like someone else on our panel today. And of course, media experts or lawyers. So that's a bit of a tease there. Before I introduce Mark, I just want to remind people, if you want to be part of this community, if you want to chat with us during the show and ask questions to us or our guests, there is only one way to do that. We need you to go to your web browser and go to ask.thelastangry.dj.com. That works on any mobile device or desktop computer. That's ask.thelastangry.dj.com. You can just sign in, pop in your question, chat with us during the show. That's the best way to do that. But over to Mark Giuliani, who is joining us, who has some experience running radio stations.
Yes, Mark!
Hello, Alex. Hello, Mitch. And hello,
Hey.
guest who hasn't been announced yet. How is everyone? Please put your questions in. I need something to do during this show, so I want to read those questions and we'll get answers for you.
Especially answers from a lawyerly point of view, and that's good. By the way, our show today is brought to you by Arby's. We've got the meats, and don't forget the Arby's app, which is an excellent way to be aware of what specials are out there. I went and loaded up on Arby's today, this morning. It was the first thing I did at 11 o'clock. I went out there and I got me a beef and cheddar. I got the whatever it's called. It's a Jamocha shake. That's what it is, which is real good. Don't forget Arby's, where the meats are. Speaking
and the
of
horsey
meats,
sauce.
Exactly. I hate horsey sauce. Once in a while, I'll throw the horsey on by mistake instead of the Arby's barbecue sauce. That gentleman's voice is very familiar in the background. There he is, live and in person, Mr. Steve Streiker, technology lawyer extraordinaire. Steve is dined, whatever, to appear on today's show. Steve is a great guy. He knows a little bit about everything, and especially has an opinion on those things. And yeah, in a good way.
Well, that's true.
It's like Trivia Pursuit in broadcasting, but Steve has done it all. Steve, welcome to the show. Nice to have you here.
Nice to see you guys again.
How's the weather in Florida right now?
Oh, hot. We're under a heat advisory. It's like 94, and it feels like it's well over 100.
That's why I called you this morning.
That's why I was out at like 6 doing yard work, because I have a project that had to get done today, and the third day I can only work till about 9:30 in the morning. It's so hot.
Yeah, they put an announcement out that you should check in with older people because of the temperature.
That's why you got me on. Gotcha.
Yeah, I got you. So
That's
Steve's here
no
to
one
help us.
here, Mitch. That's no one.
What's-
We're all young. We're all young men here. So
Young men? Is that what we are?
that's right.
I don't know. You know, I just had my 71st birthday last week, and I'm just not. I don't give a shit anymore how old I am. You know, at one point I really did care about it. Like when I got to 65, I was like, oh dear, oh my, I'm 65. And that, Chris, all those famous models don't call me anymore.
Remember, the older you get, if you murder somebody, life in prison is not as big a penalty every year.
What a very unusual perspective to have on life as it is. Thank you,
go.
Steve. I appreciate that. So, we continue to show. We've been doing this for about a year and a little bit. Steve was at our very first program. It was a technical brouhaha, but other than that, it's good to have him here once again to ask questions. And look, oh, wow, we got a lot of people watching.
I'm the summer doldrums. Can't find anybody else, guess.
It's like Christmas in July. Think of it that way. We get unusual weather developments during this time of night. So
hey, I'm on to celebrate the 56th anniversary of man's first step on the moon on July 20th.
They did step on it. Now, are you one of those people that believe that Neil Armstrong saw construction alien habitats on the rim of the crater?
I don't think he did. Yeah.
And have you seen the video where somebody approached Buzz Aldrin and confronted him and saying that the whole thing was
slugged
fake?
Him
it was
in Beverly Hills.
Like right
when I lived there, we lived in L.A. and I wasn't there when he slugged him, but it was in the news. And that
Buzz
guy
Aldrin's
is
feisty guy.
Conspiracy theorists that have been dogging him for a long time, and he finally stepped over the line, and Colonel Aldrin who, by the way, just celebrated his 95th birthday a few days ago.
Good on him.
Clocked him.
They should get all these old, space people together. Like, I think William Shatner's like 99 now. He's certainly up there. And Buzz Aldrin, they should get them all together, throw them in a spacecraft and send them off. There you go. There is Mr.
Right
Aldrin, Mike Collins, Buzz Aldrin, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil Armstrong. There he is. Those are the guys
Buzz
that were
is
heroes.
still alive, but the rest of them are gone.
Yeah, and Neil, when he went into private life, he was very quiet. He didn't do a lot of interviews. So
he went and became a professor at the University of Dayton, and I saw him speak at today's the first day of the Oshkosh Air Venture Air Show in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I saw him speak at Oshkosh several years ago when I was my friend David. Well, David's been a guest on your show. David and I were at Oshkosh, and we saw him speak. Yeah.
Did you see him fly? Did he do any flying in the area? Wait a minute.
But he was buried at sea. He was buried at sea by the U.S. Navy when he did go.
Oh, good on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, a
Michael Collins is gone also. It's the only Buzz Aldrin that's still alive out of the crew.
Do you think Mike kind of took it hard that he had to stay up in the command module and fly around?
No, he didn't. He knew that's what the command module pilot trained for and did. Now, he could have, under their rotation, he could have been the commander of Apollo 16 if he had wanted to. But he and his wife at the time made a decision that they didn't want to go through another 2.5 years of
How did Tom Hanks get into rotation for Apollo 13? How did he manage that?
I don't know, but it's one of my favorite movies. It's they kind of took some dramatic license with some of the facts, but it was a good movie.
That's good. All right. Yeah. Well, hey, congratulations to us. We landed on the moon in 1969 on the 20th, I believe it was.
Today.
And it is today. That's right. Today's the 20th.
Today.
And we haven't been back. So go figure. I don't know why.
No, but we're on our way. I think there'll be eventually. It's been funded. There's still problems with SpaceX and Blue Origin getting the vehicles together, and the SLS, which stands for the Senate Launch System.
Wow.
Don't you think every single congressional district has a contract to do with it?
Don't you think they should run advertising on the side of the Atlas rockets or whatever it is they're using?
Well, it's not the Atlas rocket, the SLS, the Space Launch System.
Yeah, the new whoever's version of it.
Yeah,
they should have a big ad for Viagra on the side of it. That would be perfect.
There you go.
And they could pay for the flight all the way to the moon.
No, you're thinking about Blue Origin because that's what their rocket looks like.
Yeah, it looks like something. I don't know what. It just reminds me of something. Yeah. Anyhow, another show. This is show number 72. And we've been around for over a year. I want to talk first about something, and I'm glad Steve is here because he can add his lawyerly mind to the issue. It's almost like a conspiracy theory, but I was watching Rick Beato just a few days ago, and Rick was commenting on a subject along with a professor of rock, Justin Hawkins, and Anthony Fantano. And here's what they're talking about. They're talking about this copyright infringement stuff that happens on YouTube. We're on YouTube. We're not monetized, not yet, not by choice, but we're not monetized. And apparently, there's 3 levels of strikes you can get against you. It's like a copyright, which we did get a copyright flag, a blank where they completely blank your audio out, and then there's a strike. And if you get 3 strikes, they completely remove you from, they put you in the in the dungeon for like 3
Well,
months or
Rick
something
Beato's
like.
talked about this quite a bit. I'm a big fan of Rick Beato, and the Professor Rock too. And that programming depends on clips out of songs. All of their programming.
Yeah, they're there talking about songs and the music, and in Rick's case, lots of examples of where he's analyzing the music and the musical structure of it. He's not out there benefiting from
No, in fact, the bands that have a hard ban on him using their material, I think they're cutting their own throat because he doesn't play the whole song, and these are artists that. We're all getting older. That nobody listens to, music from the 1930s anymore. And these bands, I think, are killing themselves by not allowing fair use of their material on Rick Beato and other programs, because it only benefits them, helps them maybe get more streams or sell more CDs or other content.
Yeah, and for the record, here's what happens if you get a copyright flag. Which we got when we were running an old air check of my radio show. I guess, Alex, you could give us a little more detail on the flag and who it came from. I think it was on Chicago.
Oh, on a telescoped air check?
It was, yeah. So Mitch had an air check and we played it back, and we found that after we'd played it that I think it was one of the Chicago songs, or the only Chicago song that was on there. So we just got it's not a strike, so this is very different. So you can get a copyright flag. It'll warn you, just saying, hey, just so you know, these rights belong to somebody, and so we're going to give you a couple options here. We'll allow you to remove the strip it out completely, and we can do that for you, or B, you can go to our royalty-free music library, select a different song, and we'll replace that copy written song with another one. So those are the options. Which is different than a strike, because a strike can actually, if you get enough of them, they can just disable your account. In fact, actually, that happened a few years ago to the Twit Podcast Network. And what was happening was during the WWDC conference, what they would normally do is Leo and the gang would live stream. They would actually pipe the audio from the conference into their own live stream and then add their own commentary on top of that. Apparently, Apple does not like this.
Apple is nasty.
So they were live doing this. All of a sudden, their stream goes dead, and their account was completely locked. And
is that because in the auditorium somebody was playing on a PA? A song? Is that what happened?
It wasn't.
No, they were playing Apple content.
Here's the thing: it wasn't about music. Apple's lawyers do not want you reproducing their live stream. Period. So the fact that he was piping it in, basically replicating their live stream, they took it down, and I think it took them a little over a week just to get their account re-enabled by YouTube.
Right.
And by the way, trying to get a human being at Google to that is
tell me about
almost
it. I was
impossible.
Hired when I was an associate in a law firm. We had a client that had a problem that was blocked on Facebook, and trying to get human beings. And it was erroneous. They were a trade magazine, and all their content had been blocked, and it through an error. I mean, I spent all summer trying to get human beings, writing letters.
That's by design, right, Steve?
Forget it.
They do that by design. They don't want you. They want you to say it's too complicated. Let's just not deal with it. And that's Rick Beato's point. And I hopefully am quoting him correctly. His beef is that he gets a copyright flag, and then because he's monetized, because he has like 5 million subscribers, and he also promotes his guitar lessons, the copyright flag owner went in and took, this is the way it works, took his entire income for that show. It could be thousands of dollars.
Right.
And if we were monetized, we would have had Chicago or their representative.
It's not a fair system, and it ignores the reality of fair use. You can use 10 seconds of something for educational use.
No, you can't, according to YouTube.
Well, that's their policy, but the reality is fair use. But they don't want to get in that, and so they just,
So what? Yeah, that's again, that's another one of Rick's beefs, and the rest of the guys, Justin Hawkins and Anthony Fantano and the Professor of Rock, their complaints are that YouTube stands apart from their own copyright infringement algorithms that they run, and they say, hey, you got a flag over here, and you have the complaint. You guys work it out. We're not getting involved. We're not doing. We're just gonna do what the owner says. And here's Rick Beato's solution. He hired a lawyer full time to defend his copyright hits and blocks and strikes or whatever else he has going against him. And if you know the right people to go to and you have the time on your hands and you're an attorney, hint, Steve.
Well,
just let me finish. He's able to keep things going because he has a guy full time, working to keep him out of hot water about all this stuff, and that's not right. Okay, Steve.
Well, that's the meat and potatoes of Rick Beato's content, so he can do it. But somebody like you and me, that it's not a big part of our world. We're not going to do that. And there are some erroneous decisions made by the algorithm, and by the way, the artists often aren't involved in those taking the revenue. They have licensed out the enforcement of their copyrights to several agencies that stand to make money, okay, because they have a bounty on that. So they run these AI algorithms that look at all these feeds, and sometimes they're wrong, that they don't control the rights to that, but try to win again on the the rules.
Trying to defend yourself is expensive, and you got to have an attorney like you, Steve, to represent you, and then you got to know the right people to talk to. So Rick apparently has somebody that's constantly fighting, where he's using it fair use. That's the argued issue. He's even testified in front of the Congress or subcommittee about how unfair this is. And it's coming to a head because people like us, or much bigger people, are complaining about this. This just isn't right, especially the companies that buy up those publications' rights and things like that. And they're just out there like the Wild West as bounty hunters. They might as well just
there's no penalty if they're wrong, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no penalty.
So they're out there just grabbing thousands and thousands of dollars from people to do it. I'm afraid to run an air check just because of that. And that's what Rick's point is that most people just don't bother. They don't bother with playing music on their show, even if it's a short snippet, 5, 10 seconds, 15 seconds.
Or you can,
because they don't want to deal with it.
Well, Drew was on your show, Drew Dickens, and his Encounter app and podcast do use music, but he actually pays a license fee to a company that's got public domain music, and they will, as part of the deal, defend you because you're licensed to use that music. It's
and that's
like
whole
that
nother
music
thing
that's
with
on hold.
podcasts too. It's a whole other thing with it's a whole nother thing with podcasts too, because that's the wild west. There are no automated algorithms unlike YouTube. So there's probably tons of podcasts. In fact, I know many that play licensed music where they have no license for it, and they're not paying the artists, they're not paying the labels, but podcasts are a whole nother thing, and that's just completely the wild west. And in fact, I was affected by this. I learned this the hard way too, that I was doing an interview with a band, and they actually wanted me to play some of the music from their song, from a single from their upcoming album, but they gave me the permission. But of course, I still got flagged by YouTube with a copyright, because it doesn't matter if the artist that wrote the song says, yeah, sure, go ahead. The problem is they're part of a music label, and
Correct.
they've got, that label has lawyers, and so that warning didn't come from the artist. That came from way above their pay grade. So it's incredibly frustrating.
Well, they may actually not have. They may have signed the subsidiary rights away to a third party. So even if I say I wrote the song, but I have a music publisher that actually owns the enforcement rights for all my music, they're still going to go after you.
And
the Digital Millennium Copyright Act needs reform, but the problem is there's no way to get anything through Congress right now with our broken legislative branch, and so it's not going to happen until we have a president 60 seats in the Senate and a majority in the House of Representatives, there's very little action that's going to happen in the Congress.
And this is the irony of the whole thing, is that this whole issue turns on the fact, well, how is the record owner or the copyright owner being injured, by using this? And the record companies would say, well, it's keeping somebody from buying that record or that recording because they just heard it on your show.
They own the rights to the song, but there is embedded in American law a well-recognized principle of fair use. And you know what? If you flag fair use and you're wrong, there should be a penalty where you're on the hook for wrongly asserting a right on a 8-second clip out of a 4-minute record. That is fair use.
Yeah, or attributing the copyright to somebody else, or stealing the riff or the music. When I played my air check, and all an air check is, by the way, just for those that want to know, it's a scoped down version of my radio show. So if I'm on for 3 hours,
but people don't know what the word scope means.
That's why I'm explaining it right now, Steve, is because I'm only talking over the intro and the outro of the song, and the rest of it's just cut out. It's not the whole song.
Right.
Just to give you a sense of what I was doing to introduce the song or talking about the artist or something like that. It's like, where is the injury being done here? I just don't understand.
That is, in my opinion, 100% fair use.
Yeah, exactly. It's egregious, and it's an overreach, and it's a problem, and I don't know if that's going to get fixed anytime soon. This is very complicated stuff.
Well, there's bullies out there, like Steve says. It's a Wild West. So until we have somebody out there supporting our point of view, if Rick Beato and others are creating content, which I think is very useful and educational, and makes me more interested in that group. If I hear that the Carpenters have done some wonderful thing musically, and I really should pay more attention to it. Or Rick was asked what his favorite song was. He said Wichita Lineman with Glenn Campbell, written by Jimmy Webb. One of the best songs ever done. It was like it called attention to the song, and I really sat and listened to it in my own library. I happen to have the song here, and I was like, yeah, he's right. This is a great song, and now I listen to it more and more. What happened here? He introduced me to the musicality of the song, the genius of the way it was arranged and produced, the fact that they dragged some old pump organ out of Jimmy Webb's house to do the sound of the line singing.
I didn't even know that.
Backstories. Yeah, really cool, interesting stories. It made me listen to the song. I mean, out of my own library. He wasn't playing it. He was playing little snippets of it to say, isn't this beautiful what he did here, and how he made this transition or cut. I don't know enough about music to even begin to get into the conversation. Rick does. But I have a newfound interest in things like Wichita Lineman or the Carpenters or Elton John. All these artists, I wouldn't know these things if somebody like Rick Beato didn't get on and take it apart and show, the beauty of the music and what was done there. And yet there are these people that are just swooping in like vultures and stealing his income. If he didn't protect himself, he's got a guy out there protecting him from the bullies in the music industry or VC companies that bought the rights to do what Rick was saying or Steve was saying. It's just amazing that in this world that we can have bullies like that beating us up over things. We don't. It's just not fair. It's not fair for fair use. So I would join in a millisecond any organization that was trying to call attention to this. And that's why I'm asking the question and posing the point of view here, is that it's something's wrong here, as Al Pacino would say. Something's wrong here. So it's a conspiracy. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate he recognizes. For and Justice for All is the movie.
Yeah,
you got to go back to that. So, Steve, thanks for your input on that, because that is something that's weighing heavily, and I'm glad to see these other guys getting involved in this argument. So maybe enough people figure it out. They'll make the bad guys, the VCs or the individuals out there that are bullying people that are trying to use this in a true fair use fashion. So that's the issue. And YouTube, you have to pick a side. YouTube has to get involved. You guys are supplying the bullets in this particular war. You got to jump in and you got to raise your hand and say, all right, well, we're we're going to, because there are other companies like YouTube that are defending people.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Steve.
We'll keep people informed of what happens.
Yeah, we will. We'll come here every week, and we'll have an update on the fair use debacle as we know it. Exactly. So maybe some questions have come up, and we should jump over to Mark and see if we can get some of those read. I'm sure they're for Steve. So let's bounce in and ask some questions.
All right. Steve, we have a question from Lois Richter here of Davis, California, a tech lawyer. What can you tell us about current copyright laws? Is it different now that folks are all over the world?
The folks are over. Well, first of all, Lois is an uncommon name. Was my late mother's name. You don't meet any little girls named Lois very often. Well, there is different copyright laws around the world, and the problem is that the media used to be segregated by country, and now with the internet, if you have this podcast, I mean, David and I were in Japan. We were sitting in our hotel room watching this show, 13 hours ahead, and the laws are different. And international companies, Netflix has a presence all over the world, and they have different libraries for different countries, because they don't have the rights to everything that they might have in the United States. So they have additional content that you can't access in the United States, for example.
Is there a fair use island of invulnerability? I mean, a place you can go to, a Liechtenstein or a Switzerland where you can
I don't think so. There are international agreements regarding, there are conventions about, the enforcement of copyrights and how long they last. And the joke is that anytime the copyright's about to run out on Mickey Mouse, there's an extension of the U.S. copyright law. Mickey Mouse, the original, Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse, actually, for the first time, came into the public domain last year.
Briefly.
The Steamboat Willie version of Mickey Mouse is in the public domain right now.
Really?
Because it got past the 75 years after the, I don't have
Disney
memorized.
was pissed, I'm sure. Disney had to
Well,
be
they were. Pissed. They would like it go on forever, but the idea of copyright law is that you do get an exclusive use to copy your own, publish your own materials for your own benefit. But we recognize that there's a benefit of eventually that going into the public domain. And there have been mistakes made. There's several 1950s and 60s movies that actually were not properly registered for copyright and are now in the public domain. And copyright was never intended to be. The original copyright rules, I think, allowed things to go into the public domain after as short as 20 years. And, we want to be able to, Shakespeare should not have a copyright on his plays. They're in the public domain, and they're able to, we can make derivative works based on them now, and we can use them to make new content. But you can't take Mickey Mouse from the 1960s and make derivative content out of it,
but it's not Disney Mickey Mouse, it's Steamboat Willie that's at issue here.
Well, the original cartoon,
character.
The character changed its design over the years, and you can take the Steamboat Willie cartoons and incorporate them. We could play them right now in the background. Now, we might get a strike from our friends at YouTube, but it's in the public domain. The original Steamboat Willie, by the way, that were originally designed in Kansas City, Missouri, about half a mile from Jackie and my old apartment. That's where Walt Disney started his business. And
thanks for that tidbit of info. And by the way, the original Mickey Mouse voice was Walt Disney.
It was, absolutely.
That was Walt Disney's voice.
It was.
And another little Disney tidbit of info. If you go to the Hall of Presidents at Disneyland or Disney World,
yes,
Walt Disney is there now as an animatronic.
I know. So, I saw it. It looked creepy.
It didn't look like him. His head was a little bit smaller.
Oh no, it just looks like they dig them up.
If the Terminator put a Disney mask on, that's what it looked like to me.
Yeah, it looked really bad. I'm sorry. I'm a fan of most of the creative work of the Disney Imagineers, but that was not their greatest work. So Lois, I hope that answered your question. I don't know if that was exactly your question, but.
Although I'd like to sneak into that Disney exhibit at Disney World and change the thing and have him go, "You're all fired! I can't believe what you've done to me."
Well, Walt Disney, he died, I think, in 1966 in the hospital
Too much
in Burbank.
smoking.
Yeah, he died of lung cancer. But
it's a shame.
He, he was a union buster. He was not beloved by everybody who worked for him. Okay,
here we go.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to another question from our vast peanut gallery out there, Mark.
Okay, this question comes from someone here on the panel. Steve, what is it like? What was it like growing up and listening to a radio superstar like Mitch in Wilmington and Philadelphia?
There you go, man. Bobby Dark, 1380 Whams, Jet Speed News.
See, Steve was in the same town as I was, but Steve.
I actually worked at Whams. Well, I drew a paycheck from 1380 Whams. Right, I ran the tapes. I was I inherited the original job that Mitch had years later in the 1970s.
It's true.
Maybe 2 or 3 years after Mitch did it, ran Powerline and the church services.
I did.
Yeah, I worked at the Up on the Hill. I was in the radio biz.
Give us a sense of what it was like growing up in those days.
Mitch was a good, Mitch is, he dreamed of being on WFIL, worked up through the Northeast radio ladder, and he was really good. He was, he, along with Mike Schwartz, who's known as Mike Rossi, and there's some really talented people from Wilmington, Kevin Fennessy, who was a good friend of mine until he passed on.
Tom Fennessy.
His brother, Rich Fennessy, what was Rich Fennessy's air name?
Tommy Summers.
Tommy Summers, yeah.
Yep.
There was some great talent that came out of Whams. It was a regional powerhouse. And Mitch, but by the way, Mitch was like, he was precocious. I mean, he was like 16 years old on the air. I mean, he was young on the air.
I was very young.
He held down Afternoon Drive.
Yeah, at a very young age.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing about it, is that I was like the young guy in the building. I kept having to prove myself as being the young guy. If I even go near a radio station now, I'm definitely the oldest guy in the building at 71. So there's quite a that's why I'm the last angry DJ. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, what happened? This short period of time passed, and all of a sudden I'm 71 years old.
Exactly.
But you were calling me Bobby Dark. The funny story I tell about that name was that when I finally got because I started out running the tapes, as Steve said, eventually they had to fill in the all-night slot. And I did during the summer when I was off in summer break. And I had to have a radio name. I didn't want to use Mitch Hill. So they said, go on that tape and that. There's a tape in the back where all the jingles are kept. And it's just a bunch of sings. Like, it was like
on a reel.
Mitch Hill. Just like that's a cappella sing. And the only one that I liked on it was Bobby Dark. And I don't happen to have a Bobby Dark jingle here to play for you. And that's how I got the name. It was like one of the names on the... And so there may be a Bobby Dark out there somewhere at some other radio station wondering, who is this interloper? Where did he come from? So that's where I got the name. But I only kept that for a short time. And then when I went to WFIL eventually, I was able to keep part of my name.
I moved to Wilmington in 1973, and Mitch was on the air, I think. I think you were on the air.
Yeah, I graduated from high school.
Yeah, and, Chris, you billed me as a technology lawyer, which I guess I am. But, I was in the radio business from my days in Wilmington at WMPH at Mount Pleasant High School. I was, I worked at Capital Broadcasting. I was sales manager of some very successful FMs in the 1980s. I was a partner in George Francis's company. We put my 102.5 FM on the air in Greenville, South Carolina. I enjoyed my radio career. I got out of radio in 1987 or 8, something like that.
And you knew some of the people we've had as guests on the show, like Ray Quinn. I worked with him at Whams.
Well,
you worked with him somewhere else?
Well, Ray
Tom
Ray
Birch.
Yeah, I worked at WMJJ in Birmingham. I was sales manager, Magic 96 in Birmingham. Ray was the general manager. And actually, Ray and I worked for Arbitron for 3 years. And I was on a sales call in Louisville, Kentucky. And he said, "You look familiar." And I said, "Yeah, because I worked for you at 1380 WAMs in 1974, running tapes overnight." And then we became friends, and he hired me to take over right after they started up Magic 96 in Birmingham. And I was there, and we were very successful. That was one of the really fast-growing ACFMs in the early 80s.
Adult contemporary.
Well regarded, and Kenny Johnson owned the radio station, and Lee worked at one of Capital stations up in
Lee Jacobs.
Nashville. And, in those days, you only owned 7 AMs and 7 FMs at max. So there was a lot more broadcasting companies than there are now, or Clear Channel. And
do you think radio was more innovative back then, one of those conditions where there weren't these huge corporate monsters that owned all the stations? There were some big ones, but they owned 7 stations, like Lynn Broadcasting.
Well, there was a lot of copying what
Sunbury
was
Plow.
One AOR sounded like another in every market because, Burkhart Abrams would consult 150 radio stations that all pretty much sounded the same. But there's
we had Lee Abrams on the show too, by the way.
Yeah,
reminiscing about that.
Lee's a good guy. He's a pilot also, like I am. And,
cool.
I haven't talked to Lee Abrams though in a long, long, long time.
Well, you come on the show next time he's here. We'll have both of you reminiscing. That's the cool thing about radio is it was a kind of small community. It was like if you became a fireman, you could go to any firehouse in the country and have a bed if you needed it and a meal.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I enjoyed when I worked at Arbitron. I learned a lot because I would call on radio stations, some of the greatest radio stations in the country at the time, but also you had to go to the crappy radio stations too, and you would see their technical facilities or listen to their programming, and I have to go to a radio station that sounded terrible, had a terrible studio, had the wrong format, and listen to the general manager or the owner tell me how Arbitron sucked. The algorithm did not recognize the greatness in this huge audience that they had, which maybe they had a point sometimes, but generally speaking, they had low ratings because the radio station was not very popular. That's just the reality. So.
Maybe it's a good time, Alex, to remind people if they want to reach out and ask questions about how radio was and how radio is, how do they reach out to us and let us know?
Yeah, the best thing to do would be to ask questions on the show and interact live. And the only way to do that is to be part of the community. And we use Makana, our question and answer system. And you can do that by going on your mobile device or whatever computer you're using. Just type in ask.thelastangrydj.com. That's ask.thelastangrydj.com. Gives you various ways of logging in. We need to log in because we need to know your name. We prefer to also know your location. So if you can just pop that into your profile there, that way we can just address you because there's probably a million Bobs all over the world. And so we kind of want to know where our listeners are. You can vote on the questions as well and chat with us live during the show by going to that URL. That's ask.thelastangrydj.com. Operators are standing by.
But we won't put you on the Last Angry Disc Jockey kiss cam. So if you're having an affair, we won't out you.
Yeah, that's a problem because at my age, if I'm in a club and I see somebody interestingly dressed and I take a picture, they get very upset when old guys take pictures of younger women.
Okay.
But I said, look, I like your outfit. That's all. I like your outfit. And yet they gang up on me. You pervert. I go, what? I'm just 71 years old. Give me a little respect here.
Well,
what are you going to do?
Some 70-year-old woman that or whatever will have.
Unfortunately, the person that lives inside of my head is not that age. So what are you going to do?
No, I agree. Fair. You have a much more youthful outlook on life than being 71.
Yeah, true. Mark, can we go to another question? You can skip around if you need to.
Sure thing. Jerry Hoyle from Wesley Chapel, North Carolina. Thoughts on Stephen Colbert being canceled, financial or political?
Well, you look at the history of CBS, which is owned by Viacom, and how they've canceled shows or let them run out, like Letterman, is another good example. Is that I think in a roundabout way, this is just a power play on CBS is my guess. I don't know for sure. Stephen Colbert certainly has a sustainable audience, and maybe he's got a slight ding in his ratings right now. But I have a feeling he's going to come back in some fashion and prove them all wrong. But I think that CBS is playing games. Steve, do you have an opinion?
Well, of course, they publicly have said that it's not political. However, they're making it in advance of the Skydance merger that has not gone through. I mean, it's been approved, but it hasn't taken effect yet. Look, it's not bad for Stephen Colbert. He's going to end up making a lot of money in whatever the next thing he does. They have the #1 ratings in late night, but there is a point that they did bring up, which is true. Linear media and network affiliate television are like I hate to say it, like the radio business. They are not as strong a revenue generator as they were 30 years ago. And they are losing money, supposedly. It depends how they do the accounting. It costs money to produce that show. I think they have over 250 employees in that building. And Stephen Colbert makes $16 million a year. So the ratings in network affiliate television are way down. And I don't know why the affiliates allowed this to happen, but the snippets, people don't have the patience to watch even an hour-long TV show. What's more popular are the little pullouts, the bits and things that are on YouTube or whatever, or TikTok or wherever they get published. And I'll tell you, if I own network affiliate televisions, I'd kind of be aggravated that something that was my meat and potatoes now you could get all that content without having to watch, WTSB and, Channel 10 in Tampa. You could just, I watch Colbert, but I watch the feeds, on YouTube and things.
The shorts.
And there's no commercials in there. Yeah, the short, because they do the monologue, they do the other first bit, they do the interview as a separate one that gets posted. And you don't have to watch the local affiliate to be able to watch the whole show. You're nodding, Alex.
Alex, you have a
what's
comment?
Your view on that?
Yeah, so from what I read, it's very clearly about money to me. I'm sure there may be some other stuff going on, but I think what Steve alluded to is correct about linear TV. There are people, quote unquote, cutting the cord every single day. And, when you read these press announcements of company XYZ has decided to either merge with another company or fire 50% of their staff. You're seeing this stuff all the time, week after week. We're hearing about this stuff, and so it's very clear, the writing's on the wall, that linear TV, I think, has a limited lifespan, limited interest, and I think this is a perfect opportunity for someone like Stephen Colbert, who I don't know what's in his mind, but I have to assume he enjoys what he does, and it's not about the money, that he would want to do something else. Now, we don't know exactly what that looks like. That could be going out on the road doing stand-up, or it could be creating a new show. But I think this is a perfect opportunity to basically completely overhaul his late night show, because remember, that show is from another era, right? So now it looks very, very dated when you look at how the upper echelon of modern YouTubers are even designing their shows, right from the set design. They don't have a live orchestra. They don't have an opening monologue.
Well, it's a throwback to 1950s talk shows. I mean, there's a through line all the way from Jack Parr and Steve Allen all the way through Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel and all of that.
Absolutely. And look, I'm not saying I don't like that format, but I think this is a good opportunity to like someone like him could do like what Conan did with Conan and O'Brien Needs a Friend after he left network television. I think YouTube is the perfect platform, the perfect modern platform to re-architect his show and come up with a new way to bring in the existing audience, but also build a new audience that maybe didn't have, that wasn't paying for cable, that could watch his show. He could easily monetize that show in other ways with memberships and subscriptions. And
Conan's podcast, one of the best podcasts out there.
Yeah, so he could do something like that. There is no reason why he couldn't. I think he'll be fine, but this
maybe
is
he needs to grow a big, bushy beard like Letterman and go out and do...
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. I think if it hadn't been for this environment where the Trump administration is...
Careful,
inappropriately
Steve.
threatening content, and trying to exercise their authoritarian power over it was indefensible to hold up these mergers and force these payoffs because he doesn't like some content. But
now for an opposing point of view is Mark.
No, not opposing. Not an opposing point of view, but there is something. There's a bunch of things coming together here, all at the same time. Okay. And if you look at the lawsuits that have been going on these networks, just take the voting machines. Fox, settles for almost $1 billion. Mm-hmm. So what do they start to do? They got to pay this money. They start cutting back on the talent that's making an enormous amount of money every year. So Carlson goes. Now you look at CBS. They just lost a lawsuit. What are they doing? They're trimming the fat, and they're getting rid of some of the talent. And I think there's that combined with the fact that people are finding out that they can consume this media much faster on YouTube by turning up the speed, by skipping through things.
Oh, I do that. Boring. Drives my wife crazy.
Right. And it's something that radio and linear TV have to figure out. How do they play that same game?
But they're not. They're not going to figure it out.
We're trying to figure it out. At least
But by the way, there are going to be 4 newsrooms in Tampa, Florida. That's just 4 network affiliates that have 4 newsrooms. We're going to be lucky to have 1 set of local newsrooms in 5 years.
It's interesting
but even those contracted news carriers like UPI and all those guys, they can't keep staff. So it's interesting how all of this is becoming more and more difficult to produce broadcast, media.
Mark, that's
TV,
a valid,
radio, or anything.
Yeah,
valid point.
Right.
Think back not too long ago when Walter Cronkite, he was a famous newsman, the most trusted man in America. CBS had the gold standard of newscasting. They did not make money with the CBS News with Walter Cronkite. It was like probably the biggest expense they had. But because of the way radio or TV worked back in those days, they were able to continue running it. And they used that gold standard that they held for their news operation to improve the quality of other programs or give them a shot. So, making a round circle here, it's a whole different world. And maybe they can't afford to do those kinds of things because people have very short memories, or their expectations, or they want to see something shiny and they want to go to that, or squirrel, and go over and check out that latest podcast that somebody's doing. So I just want to keep that in perspective because there was a time where they were able to lose money on these shows. And as far as Colbert goes, I agree with Steve. I don't think he's going to have a bit of a problem doing something else. He used to do a thing called the Colbert Report, where he played a ultra right-wing expert. Yeah, there's Walter. He I thought in character, he played that character. I thought he was better than he is on the Tonight Late Show. So maybe he'll do something like that. Maybe we'll bring back the Colbert Report. Who the heck knows? So interesting world that we live in. Let's jump up to another subject here, and it's one that Mark brought up. So, Mark, why don't you bring up the next big subject involving Google? You have something you want to talk about there?
Well, there's been a couple of different lawsuits brought up against Google from DOJ and the states, and one of them is a lawsuit on basically the fact that they have a monopoly on the advertising methodology that's digital. And the second lawsuit was one that was talking about their search, and basically they've got a monopoly on search. So there's two cases there. I know Gannett has a case against them, and I think one of the gaming companies has a case.
Well, there's a
against them,
third
too.
one. There's the Google Play Store. There's three of them. There's the search monopoly case that the Justice Department's brought. There's the ad tech monopoly case. By the way, these are, getting queued up for trial. Google Play. And then there's a bunch of state cases against Google for antitrust related things. But
Right,
none
and
of them have been
DOJ
settled
just
yet.
DOJ won in September, won one of them, and just won a couple weeks ago the other one. So now they're all waiting for the penalty phase.
Well, that's just when the negotiations start. Look back to the 1984, Bell breakup.
Breakup of Bell, yeah.
How does this affect the average person? I mean, I really don't give a shit about Google or what their troubles are on a corporate level.
Well, it does.
How does this affect me as an individual?
It does because you don't have much of a choice on search, for example, because Google pays Apple somewhere north of, what is it, $2 billion a year to be the first choice for the search on the iPhone, right, Mark? It's something like that.
I've got a Sony TV with a Sony remote,
Something
and
like
it's got
that.
a
I'll look it up.
Google and a Netflix button right on it, and they're paying Sony to be able to put
Well,
those there.
that I believe is a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act, and my guess is that that's gonna get dissolved. There's also cases going on in Europe too, in the EU, against them for the similar allegations. My guess is that Google is going to settle and divest some of the stuff. I think they're going to end up spinning YouTube. In fact, it would be good for shareholders. And by the way, if you listen to Professor G, Scott Galloway, he talks about this quite a bit. It would be to the benefit of the shareholders if they would spin YouTube off to the shareholders as a separate company. That would unlock a tremendous amount of value at Google.
Does everything have to be tied to making a financial gain? Isn't it just something that's in the best interest of the public? People will do better because they do this.
Mean
my socialist point of view.
The public service, convenience, and necessity? Yeah. We were told that broadcasters were supposed to adhere
operating in the public interest to serve their community. Right, of course.
Yeah. Okay, I agree but there's been, by the way, antitrust has been a dead letter for the last 20 years. Justice Department has not been very aggressive in enforcing antitrust, and our government right now is a little bit up for the highest bidder.
Ouch.
And well, I mean, there's a law that requires TikTok. They had 190-day extension. Has to be divested from the Chinese. That is a public law. But no, they're playing games with that in violation of a statute passed by Congress. And because a lot of money is, going back and forth.
You're getting Mark's attention. Mark, you should jump in.
I was just going to go. So in 24 and 25, Google paid Apple between 18 and 20 billion dollars to
I was wrong by
search.
$16 billion.
You missed it by that much. Oh, that's pretty funny.
And and that's money that went right to Apple's bottom. And listen, I'm a shareholder in Apple, so I'm thrilled that they got $16 billion. It's a $4 trillion market cap company, so even that is kind of a drop in the bucket to Apple's.
How much money does
revenues.
Apple have sitting in the bank? Just cash.
I think $400 billion of something like that.
You can't comprehend what that really means. It's like I was watching Joe Rogan. They're saying, what a million seconds is? It's like 31 days. And you know what a billion seconds is? It's like 31 years. So, when you start throwing these billion numbers with a B, $1 billion, it's just amazing that kind of money, that Apple has $400 billion. It just, how can they possibly run that company on the straight and narrow without using that money in some influential way to do some kind of nefarious?
Apple has $48.5 billion in cash on the balance sheet.
Oh, it's amazing. $1 billion. I'll take $20 so I can go to Arby's and have a nice lunch. That's all I need.
Yeah.
To keep it going. Mark, did
what
you?
Edward Dirksen said, $1 million here, $1 million there. After a little while, it becomes some real money. But,
what's up with that?
$1 million. What? It's like in the what were the movies? Austin Powers. $1 billion, $1 million,
no,
right?
Just $1 million,
yeah,
and
like
he's like,
$1 million.
Yeah,
what's $1 million?
10 million. He's got his villainous volcano lair where he's living.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what they used to call FU money, Alex. What was that movie in the first time when they referred to that? It was a pretty funny movie. What was it? When did they start using FU money as the? I don't want money. I want FU money.
I don't know. It's just an expression people use.
Was it Wall Street? Maybe it was in Wall Street. I don't know. I'm trying to get the genesis of somebody's comments. So money's the big mover and shaker. But, nowadays the big money is way above our pay grade. Us poor mortals living on the planet. The ones that are going to be engulfed by this super volcano in the middle of Yellowstone. All the animals are running away from Yellowstone. So us poor plebeians will be covered in ash and other things like that. Pete Seeger, the folk singer.
He didn't care about money. He didn't make billions. There's his stamps.
Yeah, but that was a side effect. And it's interesting you bring that up. He was just holding up a copy of Pete Seeger in a book.
I'll hold it back up if you want to go.
Hold it back. I'll switch over to it so he can see it. There was a time where live musicians were not in it for the money. But then, it cost a lot of money to run an organization like Apple Records. It cost money to run that, and they had to, be musicians in order to fund that operation. Nowadays, if you talk to any musician about radio and streaming, they're all going to say the same thing. They're going to say, "Oh, you mean free radio or free distribution on the internet?" They don't make shit on sales of stuff on Spotify. But what they do get is they get the option to be able to go out on tour and charge $150 a ticket to be able to go see them perform live. So that's where musicians are now. They're stuck with going out and going live. It's not, and they're not necessarily doing it because they didn't get into the business to be financially viable. They got into it because they had an art that they worked hard at.
Well, you can't make any money. There's no selling CDs and records anymore.
Not anymore.
And streaming doesn't really pay very well, and you have to make the money on touring. And the internet's destroyed magazines, local radio, now network affiliate television, late night network television.
They're all going down.
Everything.
Tell me, it's going to take a giant asteroid or a volcano to reset the Earth. Mark, you look like you're ready.
It hasn't destroyed local radio. Local radio.
All right, we got to hear from the local guy. Mark owns 2 radio stations downstate. Do you think that's too many? You think that
No, it hasn't destroyed it, but I'll tell you, Mark, your revenues would be double if we were back in 1985. Your revenues in that market would be double what they are today. I hate to say that, maybe even more. I know when I was sales manager in Birmingham, what that market makes less than 50%, even without adjustments for inflation. The radio revenues are dramatically lower than they were 20 years ago. And everywhere.
Steve, the market he is involved in, including Salisbury, it's like 44 radio stations. In that market. That's an ungodly number of radios. Whereas in Wilmington, in northern Delaware, there's 1 or 2 FM stations.
Well, that's the artifact of being near Philadelphia and the way FCC allocated radio stations. But
they didn't do it in the public's interest.
Well, Mike Rossi's on 4 signals down there. He's, I always tease him that.
Friend of the show.
Well, yeah, one of the radio stations is it's called the Vault in Lower Delaware,
and that's where they keep his salary.
But I kind of tease him. When are they going to make the jingle for for W23XA3. You know, that's one of the stations that he's on, right?
Yeah, you got to translate.
W23XAV. You know.
By the way, I'd love to get
Mark.
John
Do you have translators on the air for your radio stations down there?
We're both FM, so no.
You don't. FMs. So you don't have any translators. Okay.
Right.
Could you do it? Don't you have any ghosting or any shadows down there? I mean, talk to your engineer, but you could have a study done, and maybe there's a need to extend your coverage to meet your public service of the community you serve.
Well, right now we're simulcasting on both, and we cover from the west coast to the east coast of the peninsula.
All right, well that's good.
So we cover from Easton we cover from the Chesapeake Bay to the Delaware Bay over to Cape.
Yes, but do you have the welding supply company as one of your advertisers like Mike has on the Vault?
He does? Wow. Do you do a remote broadcast there?
He does. He did a remote. He did a remote at the. Listen, I'm laughing. It's great that the sales rep sold that, and I'm sure that they get customers for it. It's right in the demo, for young, for men.
And what did he get in return? A heat stroke, and he had to have the ambulance.
He did. He had to be taken he had to get EMT treatment because he passed out. He collapsed in the middle of the remote.
I've done that, but not outside in the heat.
But he's much better now. After, by the way, the next week, the area where you live, Mark, there's a lot of deer in lower Delaware and northern on the Delmarva Peninsula. And like 3 deer cleared his car, but the 4th one did not clear the car. Yeah.
And that's one of the things when you're driving a car and you see like a couple of deer and they wander across in front of you. Watch out, because if there were 2 there's going to be another one somewhere behind them.
Bambi will get you. That's for sure.
Yeah, and the deer, what happens is you hit them and they fly up into the air and land on your windshield and come crashing onto your lap. And
well, fortunately, he did not come in. And I'm hoping that you'll have Mike on as a guest on the show, because Mike has had a long, illustrious career in radio.
Mike has been here. He's friend of show.
Oh, was he a guest on the show?
Yeah, he's been on before. Yeah,
okay.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Maybe a year ago, but maybe we can have him back.
Do we have any good questions, Mark? Any other good questions?
I think we're plumb out of questions at the moment here.
Good.
Oh, there's one there from somebody I know.
Okay, well, we covered most of this, but I'll repeat it anyway, Steve. Where did you get your start in radio, and how did you sound on the air?
How did I sound? Well, probably not good enough, because my radio on-air career, I was the Q man in the Q van for 3 years.
Hey, babe, I'll be back for you.
Okay, I'll give you the quick back of the envelope. Okay, I actually got involved in media when I first was a freshman in high school at Council Rock High School in Bucks County. And we had a great television radio teacher, Mr. Metzger, who literally on the first day of class in 9th grade sat us down and told us how important media was, and that broadcast media, and that we were going to embark on the public interest, convenience, and necessity. And I'm not kidding about that. That was the first lesson about broadcasting that I was told. I had actually spent a lot of time around radio and television stations when I was younger than that, though. My dad was a well-known author that was interviewed on TV and radio, and he had a television show on WCAU, the CBS O&O affiliate in Philadelphia. So when I was like 8, 9 years old, I would go they taped it on Thursday night. And so I would be taken down there, and I could wander all over WCAU, AM, FM, and TV all night long. And I could sit in the room with John Facenda and Mayor Rizzo as they played poker. Okay, that was my introduction to broadcasting when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. We moved to Wilmington in 1973, and we moved down the street from Mount Pleasant High School, where I went to high school, and they had WMPH, and our competitor down the street was Mitch Hill's high school. WZZ, what were the call letters, Mitch?
WZZE, what a great progressive
ZZE.
name.
Yeah.
Z, 88.7.
And we had a big competition between us, the two high school.
It was friendly.
Yeah, it was. But I really enjoyed my high school years. I was station manager of the radio station for a while, and we built a new facility and upgraded the facility while I was in high school. Bruce Weiner, who lives here in Tampa, and I built new studios one summer. I learned how to do carpentry and electrical wiring and all that stuff. It was a really great experience. We had a lot of freedom by the adults to kind of just run a radio station. And we were a rock station. We had some block programming. And then I got a part-time job working at Whams, like Mitch did. Everybody at the radio station, a lot of them had part-time jobs at the local radio stations, WTUX or WILM. Guy Vanderlook worked at WILM for a while, and David and Steve Balick worked at WTUX. David eventually became the chief engineer at WJBR, which is, big regional radio station. It was anyway in those days.
Not anymore.
Then when I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Delaware for a while, and I moved to Fort Myers, Florida, where I got a job as a salesman at 96 Super Q.
The Q man.
WLEQ. But I was pressed into service. I got to drive the station van every day. And part of my duties were to get the van we did remotes like you wouldn't believe in those days. And I had to get the van to the remotes clean and well ordered and set it up. That was part of my duties. And I sold advertising. Worked for Jan Canner, who had worked at was an executive at WQAM. He was one of the owners of Gold Coast Broadcasting.
Great radio station, yeah.
It was a good radio station. It's now owned by Beasley. It's in the same building. We built a brand new building. I actually supervised the construction. I was given that responsibility to show up and make sure the contractors.
That station originally was a shithole.
We were in a mobile home, but fortunately for me, it was terrible, and it was a pit. It was a toilet, and but fortunately, the sales office was up in Fort Myers in a strip center next to Lee Lighting Center, and so we had a real office. But the poor announcers were sometimes the air conditioning would break, and you're right next to the Everglades in the summertime. Can you imagine? And it was terrible. But we built a brand new building, which is it's actually the headquarters for Beasley Broadcasting now, I believe. Yep.
Yeah. You drive down 41, you can still see it over there in the corner.
Yeah. I climbed all the way up that tower once without safety equipment.
And they're like the fifth biggest broadcast ownership out there. They got a bunch of stations.
Yeah, of course, it's not WLEQ anymore. It's WRX something, RXK. It's The Rock.
Sure.
Yeah. But anyway, I worked there.
We're starting to put people to sleep talking about call letters.
I got a job out of Broadcasting Magazine. First I got an interview in Atlanta to be a client service representative at Arbitron. And I went up there, and I flew up there on my own money because they had already chosen somebody, but they hadn't offered the job yet. And I said, "Don't offer him the job yet. Let me interview." And the guy who ran the Arbitron office in Atlanta said, "Oh, well, if you show up, I'll interview you." So I bought my own ticket on Eastern Airlines. I flew up there. I rented my first car using my Sears credit card.
Oh, baby.
Okay, that's the only credit card I had. And I drove to the office and interviewed. They still gave the other guy the job. So I flew back without the job back to Fort Myers. And a few weeks later, I got a telephone call that they had an opening in Dallas to be the CSR, the client service rep, to make $18,000 a year. That's how much I got paid.
Yeah, baby.
And would I be interested? Now, this time they sent me a plane ticket. And I flew to Dallas, interviewed. They offered me the job. I flew back. I told my girlfriend that I was moving, and I wanted her to move with me. And she said she wouldn't move with me unless we got married.
Ooh.
And I made the decision that we were going to get married. So we got married like a week later at my grandparents' house in Cape Coral, Florida. We packed my 1972 Olds Cutlass with the trade transmission that had broken, and I fixed on trade because I was given some trade to get my transmission fixed. And we had a party, and we sold her car for $300, and that funded our wedding ceremony and little party.
Wow.
And Monday, June 1st, 1980, I went to work at Arbitron. But then I went for Arbitron. I got hired. I went to Chicago. I was promoted. And I was actually Arbitron's #1 salesperson. I was promoted.
Good on you.
And I went to President's Club at Control Data and had a very successful career and made money in those days. I thought I was a millionaire.
When did you become an
50,000.
attorney? Where did you find time to become an attorney?
Well, I didn't until it was after that. And I went.
Okay.
I was. Then I was sales manager at 96. No, Magic 96 in Birmingham for Ray Quinn. I got hired there, and then I went to work for George Francis, and we put my 102.5 FM on the air, and I was manager there. And then I was sales manager at Q104 in Kansas City. Look, in the radio business in the 1980s, everybody had a new job every 36 months, you know?
Yeah, it was the kind of job that you were only as good as the last ratings book you had.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have a good book, then, the writing was already on the wall at that point. But even if you had good ratings, 2 years, maybe 3 years tops.
Anyway, that's how I ended up in Kansas City, which I kind of became my home on and off for the next 30 years. And I left the radio business. Listen, I got fired at the KBEQ. I missed a couple sales numbers, and the radio business in those days, you either made your numbers or you didn't. And it was a mess. It had these huge ratings, but they were all teens. And it was the first radio station that I worked at that didn't have big, 2554 numbers. And we just didn't make these aggressive numbers that Capital Broadcasting wanted for that radio station. So I left there and I went and became a sales rep at Sprint. And I became the #1 enterprise salesperson at Sprint. And I was at Sprint for for 5 years. It was not. There was no cell phones. It was long distance. Really? It was long distance.
Oh, wow.
And data lines and data networks for major companies. This is long before mobile phones were part of Sprint. And then I decided I wanted to move up in the world and I was going to get my MBA at the UMKC. And I was intercepted by the dean at the law school. He says, "Oh, you don't want to go into the business program. You want to go to law school." And he called me up the day before the law school class started. And he said, a few people that we accepted aren't going to show up. And if you have to be on the first day under the American Bar Association rules, you have to be in the class the entire year. You can't start in the middle of the year. He says, if you're here on Tuesday morning, you can be in the law school class. And I left Sprint and I went to law school. So that's not the short version.
Rest is history.
That's how I went to law school.
You're a smart guy. You did well. You passed the bar. Were you ever on the bar in Delaware? I did. I almost did. When Jackie and I lived in New York and I worked for AT&T, I was a lawyer at AT&T in New York City. There was a huge layoff, and I was laid off, and I was going to take the Delaware bar exam. But it's not easy to get on the bar in Delaware because you not only have to pass the bar exam, you have to go through a preceptorship with a bunch of requirements. And I would take the train down 1 week a month and stay at David Mackenzie's house. And I would go check the box on all the things I had to do, attend court hearings and a bunch of different things that you have to do to become a Delaware lawyer. And right before we were going to move to Delaware and I was going to take the bar exam, we decided that I would take the California bar, and we moved to Los Angeles. Good move. Good move. And the
I'm
rest
a California
is history.
lawyer.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
because that means you're an entertainment lawyer and you're a technology lawyer and you're all those
Well,
things.
I always
Steve,
worked in technology field of IT technology, privacy, data security, cybersecurity. Those have been my focus areas.
Sure.
Electronic communications.
Well, thanks for sharing that background. We appreciate it. Thanks for being on the show. You have the record so far. I think you've been on here 3 times.
There we go. Do I get a smoking jacket if I get to 5?
We'll set your jacket on fire, which would make it a smoking jacket, I think, at the same time. Thanks for being here. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Appreciate it. Good talking to all of you.
Thank you,
Glad
Steve.
we got your history lined up there. This is show number 72. We want to continue doing it, and we can't do it without your help. Please, folks, subscribe. It's there in front of you. If you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe button. We need you to hear so that we can get more big-time guests like Steve to come on the show. Steve looks at the number of people we have as subscribers, and he says, you got to get those numbers up, Mitch, or you're gone. You're gone if you're not going to get more numbers, so keep it going. Alex, what other ways can people reach out, touch, and tell us what they want us to do?
Thanks, Mitch. There are a couple ways you can do that. First of all, if you like the show that you're watching or listening to right now, we are on YouTube. You can hit that subscribe button, like Mitch said. You can also share it with a friend. We would sincerely appreciate it. You can also find this show as an audio-only podcast if you prefer to listen to us later on your morning commute. We are available on all podcast platforms wherever you find your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn and Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Alexa. You can ask your smart device, that's right, you can ask your smart device to play The Last Angry DJ, and it will play the show for you. And of course, if you are an Apple Podcast, you can also leave reviews there. Give us a 4 or 5 star, whatever you think this show deserves. We would appreciate it. You can also donate to the show by going to patreon.com/thelastangry DJ. That's patreon.com/thelastangry DJ.
One more time, Alex.
A coffee supporter at $2 a month. It is a subscription, and it's patreon.com/thelastangry.
Good. I don't know where you get your coffee, but $2 doesn't make it.
It's, you know what, I haven't adjusted for inflation in a couple of years. We might have to bump it up to $3, please.
Yeah, you better do it.
And also, we'd like to thank the people at Boink Software who make Memo Live. That's the application that runs this entire show and network. So thank you to those guys and Oliver Breinbach, who runs the show, and for helping us get set up on that program. It's been instrumental in producing this show. We wouldn't be able to do this show at this level of quality, streaming at 4K, without Memo Live, so thank you to those guys. And of course, last but not least, if you'd like to join our Discord community, I'm going to leave this floating magic QR code right above my left shoulder right here. I'm going to leave that on the screen for a minute.
Oh, that's
if
cool.
You scan that
It's expensive.
with your phone, yes, it cost us a lot of money. I have to pay a lot of money for that. That will send you into our Discord server where you can continue the conversation after the show. And we've got all sorts of different channels. So everything's broken up by topics that you want to discuss. So we don't have to discuss this show. We could discuss movies and broadcast industry and all sorts of stuff there. So head over to the QR code for that. And I believe that just about wraps things up. I'd like to personally thank our guest, Steve Streiker, but I'm going to hand it back to Mitch because he probably has a few other things he wants to say.
Well, I want to thank Mark for being here. It's always a pleasure to have Mark here to ask those great questions that we get in, as Alex told us how to do that. And don't forget, Mark is our poster boy for ownership. He owns radio stations, and he deals with the problems and, advantages of owning a radio station. And once in a while, I go to our sponsor, Arby's, and tell them that they have the meats and could they help our poor buddy Mark out with a few certificates for sandwiches. Mark, do you need like a beef and cheddar, a Jamocha shake?
Yeah,
well, I'll tell you what, Steve, send me your address. I'll send you some coupons.
There you
for
go.
some capons. Get
Fantastic.
it? Chicken
I like
sandwich, coupons. Yeah, Arby's is good for you. So thanks, Mark, for helping out. Thanks, Steve, for being here as our returning champion guest. Always willing to talk about just about any subject, amazing as it may be. And maybe one more time before the year's out, we'll get you back here. Do you think you might do that? If a hurricane doesn't wipe you out in the meantime.
There you
God
go.
knows. Hey, and by the way, did you know that I know some of you know that I'm a huge fan of corgis, dogs, and I lost my corgi a little over a year ago, Paddywhack, and I have finally found another corgi to take place, a little puppy, and his name is going to be Loki, as in Marvel Comics and Thor's
Loki
buddy
and
Loki, the god of mischief, and Loki and Elke. Go ahead, Steve. You can show Elke off here.
No, she's not up here anymore. So.
Oh, she's taken a hike, as it were. We have a lot of people that left for some reason. I don't know why, like Elke. So maybe it's like the buffalo on Yellowstone, and the bears. Have you seen the pictures? Bears, buffaloes, elk. They're all escaping Yellowstone. Something's going to happen there. So you heard it here first, folks. They're going to, the Q-Man from the Q-Van is going to be visiting Yellowstone. That's what's happening.
That's me.
So great show, guys. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. Next week it'll be the broadcast boffins, we call them, at a new time and special time because Alex is taking a trip. Alex, where are you going? That you're not going to be here next Sunday.
I'm going to be going out of town. I'm going to the city of Lillooet to mix a concert. So every year the city of Lillooet has a long history, but for the harvest of apricots, they call it the Apricot Music Festival. So it's a 2-day show, Friday and Saturday. So I'm going to be mixing that show and arriving. I'm going to get back here on Sunday evening. So
all right. So have a good and a safe trip. And all you folks, until we see you next, be good.